Hello, dear friends. The battles on the front continue, and we keep analyzing the situation. So, friends, today we'll have a very interesting update, because in just one day, the Russian army took almost 50 square kilometers under control. There was a breakthrough into the center of Kupyansk, a 6-kilometer advance in the Serebrianka forestry, and a 5-kilometer push in the Dnipropetrovsk region, deep into the region. In short, a lot of very interesting things happened. Friends, a small request before we continue. If you enjoy this video, please support the channel by subscribing, giving a like, and writing in the comments where you're watching us from and what you think about what I've described. And now, let's move on. We'll start, as usual, from the north and move south. And interestingly enough, we'll begin not with Russian advances, but with Ukrainian ones. Over the past day, the armed forces of Ukraine advanced only in one area in Kharkiv region, right here. They counterattacked and managed to drive Russian forces out of most of the village of Sotnitsky Kazachok. Russia still controls the western part of the village, while the rest has become a grey zone. Nothing critical, since the Russian army hadn't been trying to advance further from there anyway. The village is on the border and has been under a shaky control for the most part. The total area that Ukraine managed to take back was just 2 square kilometers. That's the entirety of their gains across the entire front. No other progress was recorded. Meanwhile, Russian forces advanced very well on the Kupyansk sector, and not just on the approaches but inside the city itself. Videos appeared online showing Russian soldiers in different parts of the city, including the square near the administration building, by the stadium, and in other spots. I know there are many debates right now about how stable Russia's control is. Let's be clear, even with these advances, we are not talking about controlling half of Kupyansk, as Russia's chief of the general staff, Gerasimov, recently mentioned based on local command reports. Even if we assume this control is stable, it would only mean Russia holds around 15 to 17% of the city. That's a good result, especially for such a difficult sector, but it's not 50%. Now, as to whether Russia has stable control in the city center, I'd say that's doubtful. To have secure control, safe from counterattacks, Russia would first need to straighten the salient, expand control westward to the highway, and form a wider zone. To achieve that, a large number of troops would need to be brought in. And to bring in that many troops, solid logistics are required, which don't exist here. The main issue is the Oskol River. The crossing over the Oskol is only 4.5 kilometers from the front line, which is not enough distance for safe transfers of large forces. Guys on the ground tell me the same. The Oskol is the biggest problem. Without it, Kupyansk would have already been taken long ago. But because the front is so close to the river, moving large units across would cause heavy losses. Still, what does the Russian push into Kupyansk center tell us? I asked people on the ground about this, and here's the explanation. Why were these advances even possible? Before, Ukraine had been holding Russian forces at bay, not letting them approach the city. But in the videos now, you can see Russian soldiers calmly standing, waving flags, and even moving around casually, almost carelessly, as if there's little danger. This shows that Ukraine's defenses here have been thinned out. Why? Because a whole brigade was pulled out from this sector and redeployed near Dnipropetrovsk to contain the crisis there. That's why Russian troops have been able to push forward inside the city. Ukraine's manpower here has been significantly reduced. Now, the main question. What does this mean in terms of prospects? I saw an estimate yesterday suggesting that given the Russian advance into Kupyansk center, the city will fall within 2 weeks. I disagree. In 2 weeks, it won't fall. Not even by the end of the month, I'll tell you that. But the fact is, Ukraine's situation here has seriously worsened, and things have become easier for the Russians. So the chances of Russia capturing Kupyansk by the end of the year have indeed risen sharply. We'll be watching this sector closely. Now let's move further. Very good news has finally come from the Serebrianka forestry. Here, take a look. I've been telling you in earlier reports, for those who watch regularly, that Russian forces were advancing here based on information from guys on the ground. And now it's confirmed. What do we have? Russia significantly expanded the control zone from the northern areas all the way to the Siversky Donets River, reaching positions before the village of Serebrianka. They also advanced westward up to Lake Dolhenka and even beyond. The next objective now is to link up with Russian positions in Torsky and clear out the entire pocket, after which they can begin pressuring Yampil and Dronivka. Locals say the forest should be fully cleared by November. Numbers: the advance was over 5 kilometers north to south, over 6 kilometers east to west, with more than 16 square kilometers taken under control. Over the past month and a half, Russia has been moving here very actively. Comparing June 1st to now, the difference is huge. The pace of advance has accelerated greatly. If they indeed manage to fully secure the forest by November, it will be a massive success, considering this area has been contested for 3 years. Moving on, the front continues to crack for Ukraine on the approaches to and within Dnipropetrovsk region. Over the past day, Russia advanced in 2 areas. The first one is on the Novo-Pavlivka axis. Here they advanced 3 square kilometers from Kotlyarivka and reached the border with Dnipropetrovsk region. This is important in the context of a possible offensive toward Novopavlivka. I told you in earlier reports that if such an operation is planned, this sector and the area north near Moravka would need to be secured. Now only this one remains. As for Novopavlivka itself, the distance from the village of Filia is 3 kilometers, and from current Russian positions, 4 kilometers. This means a 2-pronged attack is possible, so Ukraine has to be on alert. But bigger problems for Ukraine unfolded further south. Here, Russian troops advanced 5 kilometers, reached Novoselivka, and almost immediately took control of it. Videos confirming this appeared online. That's another settlement in Dnipropetrovsk region captured. In addition, Russia finished clearing Oleksandrorad in Donetsk region and Yanuarska in Dnipropetrovsk region. So Yanuarska is another settlement in Dnipropetrovsk that switched to Russian control. Overall, Russia's penetration into Dnipropetrovsk region now exceeds 7 kilometers. The advance here continues at a good pace. The newly secured area is 16.5 square kilometers. In August, we reviewed statistics showing that Dnipropetrovsk region ranked second in terms of Russian progress. I'm more than confident September will show the same picture. Now let's switch to the Orik direction. Earlier, Russian troops advanced near the village of Novo Danilivka. Videos showed forward Russian positions, assault equipment, and assault groups moving. There were reports that Russian forces had secured the crossroads there, but those reports turned out premature. They didn't manage to hold it, but it is reported they expanded the control zone north of Robotine. It's possible this refers to one of these sectors north of Robotine, though no new confirmed data came in today. Currently, only news reports are coming from here, and as you know, we don't update maps based solely on media reports because they're often premature or inaccurate. Around Malotokmachka, fighting has turned positional. The same is true for the villages of Stepov, Mali Shchabaki, and Shchabaki. Again, it's positional battles. Near Plavny and Stepnohursk, Russian troops keep pressuring Ukrainian positions, but here too it seems things have turned positional, with main Russian efforts redirected toward Pokrovsk. Now to the Pokrovsk direction. Russian troops are expanding their control zone near Udakny and continue clearing the village. Reports that Udakny had already been fully cleared appeared several times, but they turned out inaccurate. As for Kotlin, there are no active battles today. Everything has turned into positional fighting. Russia isn't pressing Kotlin anymore, focusing instead on Udakny. As for Pokrovsk itself, Russian troops are conducting offensive actions near Chunyshine and Novopavlivka, expanding control north of Novokranka. Earlier, there were reports that Chunyshine was mostly under Russian control, but no solid confirmation has come in yet. So for now, both Novopavlivka and Chunyshine remain under full Ukrainian control. South of Pokrovsk, it's reported that Russian troops are expanding their control in the high-rise districts of the city's southern part. They're also extending control north of Leontovichi. And regarding Novoekonomichna and Myrnohrad, reports indicate Russian forces are attempting to enter Myrnohrad and storm it. They haven't managed to secure a foothold yet. Some pro-Russian sources claim they're expanding their control here. So far, there is no confirming information about the expansion of the control zone. As you know, earlier Russian troops had already entered the northern outskirts of this settlement, but were driven out. And regarding Novoekonomicheskoye, as you know, earlier reports appeared from this point. after which video footage emerged from these locations. Here, Ukrainian troops raised the Ukrainian flag, but according to Russian sources, Ukrainian soldiers sent in groups of 2 or 3 just to raise the flag, take photos, record a video, and then leave the area. It is reported that Russian forces completely drove Ukrainian troops out of this settlement, and Novoekonomicheskoye is now fully under Russian control. Once additional confirming evidence appears, we will update the map. For today, that's the news from this direction, and now there are reports that Russian troops are pulling reserves from the Sumy axis and moving them toward Pokrovsk. According to Ukrainian intelligence, Russian forces will push their main effort in the area of the settlement of Udakhnoye, then advance toward the settlement of Sergeyevka, and also move toward Dobropolye. Here is Dobropolye, and here as well. In this way, Russian forces will attempt to advance, since they need to cut off the supply route to Pokrovsk and physically take control of it. After that, the entire Ukrainian grouping in Pokrovsk and Mirnograd could find itself encircled. Today, a video came out from the settlement of Boykovka. It was recorded from this location where Ukrainian forward positions were situated. There was a firefight here. Thus, we can note that this whole area passed under Ukrainian control. Ukrainian troops advanced to this settlement. However, it is possible this was a sabotage reconnaissance group. Once additional info arrives, we will update the map. As you know, earlier Russian troops took Suketskoye, Suvarovo and Fedorovka. There were also reports that Nikanorovka came under Russian control, but later Ukrainian forces counterattacked and drove them out. However, this area remains highly contested, with many zones controlled partly by Russian and partly by Ukrainian troops. We can conclude that if Russian forces control all this territory to the north and also to the south, then the Ukrainian grouping here could be completely cut off from supply. Most likely, this was a DRG sent deliberately to take photos with a flag. Perhaps it has already been destroyed, and the entire territory is back under Russian control. We continue monitoring this battlefield. As soon as additional information arrives, we will update the map. Now we move on to the settlement of Poltavka. Today, information came that Poltavka has been completely cleared and is now under Russian control. Recall that yesterday Russian troops cleared this part of the front. A video was provided from this point showing the raising of a flag, and Russian troops also came under attack here. This section had been under Ukrainian control. But this morning, reports stated the entire area was cleared and passed under Russian control. Once confirming evidence appears, we will update the map. Most likely tomorrow or the next day, the map will be shaded accordingly. Now to the Konstantinovka direction. Here, Russian troops are pressing near the settlements of Klebanbek and Plesheyevka. Recall that there were repeated claims that Klebanbek had passed under Russian control, and also that Shcherbinovka was being cleared. But Ukrainian troops are still present in Shcherbinovka, Klebanbek and Plesheyevka. Today, the only changes came from the settlement of Alexandro Shultino. A video arrived from this point showing Russian forward positions that came under attack by Ukrainian forces. We can conclude that this whole area is fully controlled by Russian troops. The advance here amounted to up to 500 meters in favor of the Russian army. Within the next 2 days, Alexandro Shultino will likely be fully cleared and pass under the control of the Russian armed forces, despite the fact that the Russian Ministry of Defense, a couple of weeks ago, had already declared it fully under control, information that turned out to be inaccurate. Today, only footage from this location has come in, so the map currently looks like this. Active combat is also taking place in the area of Belaya Gora. Here, Ukrainian forces are counter-attacking Russian positions, but no frontline advances in favor of Ukraine have been recorded. Moving further on the map, on the Chasiv Yar direction, active fighting is ongoing near Nikolaevka. In this location, a Ukrainian armored vehicle was destroyed. Here is the line of Ukrainian trenches, and at this point an FPV drone destroyed the vehicle. There is also pressure on 2 settlements, Markovo and Maiskoye. Russian forces are attacking Ukrainian positions there, though earlier claims that Novo Markovo had passed under Russian control turned out to be false. The settlement remains under Ukrainian control. Interestingly, no pressure is currently being applied on Novo Markovo. Instead, pressure is focused on Markovo and Maiskoye. Otherwise, no significant changes have been recorded here today. Summing up the past 24 hours, 46 square kilometers and 2 settlements passed under Russian control. By the standards of this war, that is a very good result.